It's Managing University Life, Coping with a Pandemic. My name's Nicky Aru. I'm the clinical lead counsellor, and I'm going to be sharing some information today along with my colleague Angus, who's the mental health advisor.
Hello, everybody.
Thanks for coming along, taking time out of your day to join us. Hopefully, we're going to take you through some approaches, sharing some practical tips, and just offering some advice on, managing life at university. As usual, there's some group agreement, general sort of guidance for today. It's going to be an interactive sort of presentation workshop, around an hour and a half, possibly a little bit sooner than that. We'll see how we get on. There's no personal information or disclosures. To keep yourself safe and others safe, you can share through the chat, and you can make notes as well if you like, but we're going to send everything out through the slides, so you don't have to worry about that. And no verbal participation is required, and so we're protecting everyone's identities. Confidentiality, so that's pretty straightforward. Everything that's discussed here stays in here. This will be posted up later on, so you can go back and review it as well. And at the end of today, there'll be a chance to post any questions, and you can use the chat function anytime through the session as well. And as always as well, we'd love some feedback, a bit of evaluation of what you find useful, if there's things that you maybe think we could have added, that'd be great. So that's kind of what we're hoping this presentation workshop will be able to offer you. The aims of the workshop, okay, we're looking to provide you with some information that's going to help you recognise and understand and cope with challenging emotions. Things like stress, anxiety, a lot of it is based on CBT and mindfulness principles, but we'll cover some other things as well, sort of social aspects and some resources that will be available for you through the university. As it says in red, it's not going to get rid of everything, all the stress and anxiety, but hopefully it's going to be a start. It's going to help you begin to explore that and give you sort of some ideas around general health and well-being. That's the aims. So the plan, scrolling on too fast there. The plan is, firstly, how do you cope with uni life during a pandemic? Everyone knows it's a really difficult time right now. Uni life, just in general, can be difficult, whether it's connecting with people, academics. So we're going to look at how we can maybe cope with some of those issues today. Then we're going to look at recognizing and understanding stress and anxiety. So just a brief introduction to that, really. What is stress? What is anxiety? What are some of the things that we found to be useful, both from our research and also from students as well? What with the feedback we're getting back of what's useful, a better understanding of it. Then we'll do a couple of techniques that can reduce stressful thoughts, physical sensations, emotions, and behaviours. There's a couple of activities which you'll be able to engage with today, and an introduction to relaxation and mindfulness techniques. Overall, we're also going to share some information about the service, the student wellbeing service. There's many components to that, and there's various entry points and different resources and ways that you can interact. So some of those will be face-to-face via WebEx, other things you can access through apps. There'll be some useful links. And as I said at the very beginning, you don't have to, make any notes. All this will be sent along the way. And then at the end, there'll be a chance for any questions and an evaluation, and we'll summarize kind of what we've covered. So hopefully that sounds okay. So yeah, we're still in a global pandemic. There's lots of fear, grief, loneliness going around. People often describe it as a COVID coaster. 1 minute you're up, 1 minute you're down, and feel overwhelmed. And the lockdown fatigue, which I'm sure everybody has experienced over the last year. For me, I would say the Groundhog Day is the one I feel it's like every day feels the same. Usually it used to be like, oh, the weekend's coming, but now it feels like every day's a Monday or every day's a Wednesday. So we'll look at how we can maybe change our routines or get into useful and positive structures in our lives that will help counteract that. The last point is really important though. It's normal to be experiencing sort of a great emotional turbulence. And that's something that hopefully part of today's session is going to be looking at, that emotional health and mental well-being. You know, everybody's experiencing it, even ourselves as practitioners, counsellors, mental health advisors, CBT practitioners, we're going through a very similar thing. So we want to kind of demystify that and, you know, share what we're finding useful and the feedback we're getting from both colleagues and other students as well. I'm going to pass you over to Angus. We're going to sort of talk a little bit about, you know, learning on through online methods and such.
Hello, everybody. I'm Angus, and I'm one of the mental health advisors, also one of the CBT practitioners or therapists here at university, part of the counselling mental wellbeing team. Thank you all for coming along. Nothing's here necessarily going to be, you know, rocket science. It'll maybe all be things that you're aware of, but I suppose it's important always just to reinforce strategies and ideas and sometimes even just straightforward, easily accessible ways of dealing with some of the sort of impact of COVID and stress, and that are actually sometimes some of the most effective ways of coping or learning to manage or reducing some of the impact of these things. So learning online, we're all doing that. The students are all doing that. Nikki and I have been supporting, working with students for a year now, obviously learning mainly online instead of on campus, and it does throw up some challenges. There's potentially some benefits. Some students have said in terms of an extra bit of time in bed in the morning, not having to travel as such, and potentially be able to be more productive in terms of, you know, during that time they'd normally be commuting. But for lots of us, there can be challenges about it. I suppose it's the lack of structure and routine, which a lot of students talk about. And as such, it's really important to try and maintain our structures and routines. So how might we do that? You know, I think that's really interesting. So it's about trying to I suppose, first and foremost, and a number of students have said this, to try and attend lectures where possible. And I know a number of students have said that's actually quite a useful way of just bedding in structure throughout the day and throughout the week, and you know, and really important. Looking at timetables, adapting your own sort of study plans. You know, again, not rocket science, but for lots of us, and myself included, in the working week, it's really important to do so. And we're all different. So some people might do a to-do list. I know one student that wrote 3 things that they were going to do academically today and 1 thing for themselves. And the 3 things academically, the first was always just switching on their laptop. So really easily accessible first sort of step, and then they could score it off, and the other 2 were potentially more complex, you know, reading a couple of articles or writing, you know, 500 words or whatever. And so, you know, so really important that some students might have a, you know, I said direct times to study or to access you know, university time. And I suppose you're not necessarily stuck to the 9 to 5 routine. So some students might work better in the evenings, late afternoons. Again, that's important to remember as well for us. It's trying to access things like, you know, sort of, you know, your peers. I know a number of students have set up sort of work, you know, through WhatsApp or other sort of social media sort of study groups together and support each other do that. I know even some students who've actually set up, you know, times to study together and have got sort of wee study groups going. I suppose it's also learning about in which part of the house do you study better. You know, some in the bedroom, some may not be possible if in student accommodation. I appreciate that, but some students may have a kitchen to study in or whatever. Some students, I know one student who certainly studied in their car, some of it, and that was easy. It was a break of routine. It gave them a different sort of space to study in, but also gave them a bit of space to do that. Do we study in peace or silence? Some students like noise, some students like total silence to do it. And you know, some students have, I say, got sort of groups together. I know one student that downloaded an app with ambient background noise of a cafe or a railway station or something like that, and they had that playing round about them as they studied, and for them that just helped. You know, I suppose just that almost like white noise helped sort of distract, so they weren't distracted by the stuff, and they'd be able to write, almost generating that kind of sort of communal sort of study environment, and that really worked for them. So I think it's about trying to look at what works for us, what's really important. It's also about trying to keep in contact with academic staff as well, because sometimes things can feel a bit overwhelming, or we start to sort of have a understanding a question or an essay we've been set or whatever. So really important to do that. Making friends, how to stay connected. I wish I could say that it was easy, it was necessarily going to be as it was before the global pandemic. It's not, and there is challenges, and it is difficult to maintain friendships, I think, for all of us. But what we have to be is a little bit more organised, a little bit more structured in how we do that. The informal opportunities are maybe not there, so it is about trying to reach out to friends, trying to maintain contact, trying to do yoga online together, watch films, gaming, just football, whatever it might be. It is about trying to set up and keep these contacts going, and looking after each other, I think, is really important as well, because I know a few students have said it was just lovely to have a WhatsApp message or some Instagram message, whatever it was, from their mate or flatmate, just how you doing, and they were able to respond, and just a real sense of community building there, and really, really beneficial for lots of people. Having enough money, finding a job, there is jobs out there. It's not easy though in this time, and having enough money is also something we'll look at in more detail with some of there's a student funding team, which I'll go into more detail later on in this pandemic. COVID concerns. I don't want to sound like anyone's great granny or great grandfather, but I suppose it is about keeping ourselves safe. It is about looking after ourselves within the kind of confines of the lockdown and the legislation. There's maybe opportunity to go for sort of social distancing walks and stuff with friends or people, and if we keep ourselves safe, then ultimately we'll keep those that are nearest and dearest to us safe as well. So that's fantastic. Next slide, please. Okay. Common pitfalls. And some of you, maybe in university for a while, so you'll probably have your own strategy, ways of dealing with these, and maybe even fall into some of the pitfalls. Looking at it, it was a while since I was at university, but I have done courses since, and I've certainly fallen headlong into some of these pitfalls myself. Unrealistic expectations about university, and that may still be around, but I suppose it's about what in the age of COVID, how can I get the best when things are online from university, and my expectations, and it is challenging. It's not the same as it would be under inverted commas at normal conditions, but it is about trying to make the most from things. How do I get the most from the study, from the learning? How do I maximise that where I am and the resources I've got in terms of myself, but also people round about me to help with that? And it ties in with that time management, which also ties in with the previous slide about study routines and keeping that structure. And really, really important. It's not about filling every hour of your day with something, because you need that time where you have me time for your friends and family, but also time maybe for spending in the academic study and pursuit. And it's about managing those three, I suppose, sort of worlds or different spheres or different sectors. And you want to spend the same amount of time in all of them, but it's important to visit them all during the day, or certainly the week. Budgeting and managing your life. Again, healthy eating, really, really important. Again, I'm probably sound like somebody's great granny here or great grandparent, but it is really important. And again, that can offer structure. And I know myself, cooking is something that I like to do, but having just that preparing a meal is a way of just setting aside, almost marking the day in different times in the day. And that can be really, really beneficial as well. It's just the benefits of achieving something by cooking, but also maybe just by the health that brings as well. Academic difficulties. Speaking to our academic team is really, really important. Colleagues and peers are really important. So many students talk about getting that informal support from their mates, their friends, their classmates. Really, really important. Loneliness and isolation, we're going to come on later on. Overuse of substances. Certainly there's no moral high ground here. There's no, standing on a soapbox, a few beers or whatever at the weekend with flatmates and that, is understandable. I suppose it's just about if we're taking substances to obliterate unwanted feelings or thoughts, or it becomes every day we're doing that, or then obviously that's when maybe starts becoming more of a problem, and we need to start to look at that. And that's why things like the counselling mental wellbeing team will be able to offer support, and there's external agencies as well which can do that. But I know that sometimes use of substances can be a problem for some students. Poor sleep, again, it's probably beyond the scope of this presentation to go into huge detail about that. We do have a presentation, I think it's part of the Feel Fab February campaign about sleep. Goes into much more detail. It's on our my Napier page, breaking it down to much more kind of details about how management and strategies there. But certainly the counselling wellbeing team will be able to advise you with that as well. And poor sleep can be part of the overall package of stress. Not fitting in, again, that particularly for first years, I think in these challenging times can be more of a problem, or more of a sense of that. Doesn't mean to say that it's reality, and I suppose it is about trying to just make contact with flatmates, cup of tea, trying to sort of bed in with them, and it's not always easy, but that's what it's about. It's about attending lectures, getting that structure, even contacting your mates back home, so there's some sort of support. So it's about just where do I fit in my studies, but also in the wider context of home and studying as well. Not knowing where to get support, there's obviously more information here, and feeling homesick is something which can be around for us, and these maybe more emphasised in the current climate. But hopefully, I suppose at this time in the academic year, hopefully for a lot of us, it's less of a problem. But we'll come to that. Yeah, next slide, please. And these are some practical tips on the previous slides. Getting info from others, we've talked about, peers, colleagues, so beneficial. Online student forums. ENSA, I'm going to big up ENSA here. We have an ENSA representative, vice president with us, and they do amazing sort of stuff around about supporting students and societies and information. So access them, we'll go and contact them. It's amazing. Course tutors, and obviously things like the wellbeing support team. Look at your weekly timetable, your week, also planning time for yourself as well. So important. So it's not just all about study, it's about doing things we like to do, exercise, online stuff, yoga, going out for walks, really, really important. Gaming, chess online, whatever it might be. Eating well. Again, academic sort of support, seeking advice, and from your tutors. Again, it's not rocket science. I know you all know that, but sometimes these things do get lost if we're starting to feel a bit overwhelmed, or it's a bit more difficult. Sometimes we're online, we're not necessarily meeting our PDTs or program leaders face to face, but really important to email them. They're there for us, they're there for the students. Talk to classmates. Again, bigging up ENSA, check out their societies, lots of stuff they're doing. Feel Fab February, lots of campaigns and events to keep students engaged with the university as it is now. Next slide, please. These are the university support services, and some of you may know about these, so I'm some of you even contacted some of them, so I apologise if I'm repeating what some of you know, but some of you may not know about these services, and it's really important. Obviously, first and foremost, you'll get all information on my Napier about all of these services. Please access that information. Please access these services. They're there for you. They're there for students if when they're open and running during the pandemic and during lockdown. Student funding, they can help with. Sadly, they don't have a pot of money to give out to every student, but they can direct students towards grants or bursaries, or you have the discretionary fund, which is not a loan, but it's a grant, which if students qualify, and not all students do, but a lot do, then that can be a way to access money for to pay for fees, but things like new laptop or whatever we need, kind of thing, and that certainly. So please contact them, and they'll be on my Napier disability inclusion team. Again, really useful for us if we're struggling with specific learning like dyslexia, dyspraxia, or ADHD, or have some physical issues, whatever, which might impact on our study and experience, or be a slight boundary to us achieving our potential at university. They can do what's called reasonable adjustments, assess that with the student to put those in place. Things like additional time at exams, or software they have to help students, or study plans, which obviously work with academics in terms of helping students maximise their full potential while studying here. Counselling mental wellbeing team will be broken down in the next few slides, but that Nikki's going to go into detail about that. ENSA, again, bigging up ENSA, fantastic. Lots of great stuff they're doing, really great support, really bearing in contact them, can look on their pages again on my Napier. ENSA advice, really useful for advocating on behalf of students, particularly if there's struggles around accommodation, or are unhappy with some issue of some experience they're having with the university directly. ENSA advice can be really, really useful for helping advocate and advise students around about those things. But a whole range of wellbeing or social issues or money issues, ENSA advice can be fantastic with. The widening participation team do a lot of work around about students who are carers, or have had a caring experience, whatever, or doing care at some point themselves. Maybe it's a non-traditional kind of university background, whatever. They can setting up sort of additional support for students. Careers teams, they're doing various campaigns around at the moment, particularly maybe relevant for fourth years or postgrad students, helping with sort of CV sort of development and mock interviews. Really useful. As a member of the careers team is based in each school or faculty, so there's a real kind of expertise there in terms of jobs and linked to potential kind of school and what's out there. And again, as I say, all information is based on my Napier. Please visit, please come and see any of these services. They're here for students. And I'll now hand you back over to my esteemed colleague.
Thanks, Angus. I was just going to say as well about this slide, the My Napier, the amount of students we come across who just haven't gone to the website to check stuff out. And when you get there and you see that actually there's lots of really useful tools. I was speaking to a student yesterday just around even study skills and things like referencing, and you can make one-to-one appointments as well, so you can meet an advisor who can sort of help liaise through that. So just make yourself familiar. It's not going to be all necessarily for you, but once you know what's there, then you're going to be armed and tooled up with that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into a little bit of information around the different types of services that are available for you through the student wellbeing support. I've got a really short video here which just gives an overview of what CBT is, cognitive behavioural therapy. So I'll just put this on for a couple of minutes and then we can continue on.
So, Nikki, I can't hear that. Is there a volume with it? I don't know if other people can hear it or not.
So we'll
No, I can't hear it either. You can still understand because there's some of it in writing.
Some writing. It's on its maximum volume. I don't know why that's not doing that. Let's go to settings.
Any sense, Billy?
You know, I can do. I can maybe. Let's have a look.
I think you need to find a way to connect the audio to the
to
the slide, but I'm not too sure.
What I'm going to do, I'm going to put the subtitles on, and I'm going to maybe talk over it. That's what I'll do.
Right. We have a couple of other videos, don't we? Yes. Sorry, everybody.
But yeah, you see the subtitles now. Okay, guys. Yeah, apologies for that. What we'll do is we'll make sure we get the audio part of that sent in the link. And for the other bits of videos, I've actually got a different, a personal laptop, which I can play the audio. I was just thought of that as we were going through, but with the other things we've got, I can actually play the audio simultaneously, so that's fine. It's only on one other video anyway, so it's not a big deal. So that's CBT, and essentially CBT is it's more of a goal focus. That's kind of what the video was saying, that it's a lot very structured, and it's looking at working on particular goals and objectives. And we've got a really good system of both evening and daytime CBT practitioners who can support you along that journey. It is, as the video showed, quite goal focused. So it's usually for those students who feel they're quite motivated and students who feel like they've got a clear idea of what it is they're looking to work on. And in certain cases, as it showed there, you might be given some tasks to do, bits of homework or journaling to go away and work on, and then you would come back and you would work with your therapist around that. The CBT that we offer at Napier is brief, so it's 5 sessions up to a maximum of 10, but it's usually 5 sessions that are offered to students, and you'd meet weekly. Occasionally you can sometimes meet fortnightly, but generally it's a weekly, week-to-week basis, and you'd work on particular goals and objectives, and then you'd come back and discuss that with your therapist. So that's one of the student services that we have, which is available to all students. The second one I'm going to talk about is counselling. I'm the clinical counselling lead. We've got a whole team of counsellors working within the student wellbeing service. And as the slide says, counselling is a confidential space where you can explore various issues and things that have maybe been impacting you, causing you distress. Something which I'm always keen to stress, though, is that you don't have to have, a mental health diagnosis, and you don't need to have a label to benefit from counselling or CBT. Particularly with the counselling, it's a space where you can explore some of these questions and concerns, and it's a safe space. It's confidential. The You will not be judged. It's really respectful, and it's a place where you can just share what's going on for you without any judgment. With the counselling, similar to CBT, you get 5 sessions, so both services are brief. If you, first off, which Angus will speak about later, there's a pathway to start the counselling or CBT, which is an assessment. If for whatever reason you feel that the issues you have are slightly more complex, then we will suggest other external longer term supports. But the brief therapy which we have offers both the CBT and the counselling. And our main aim is really to give students, a better sense and control of their own abilities, manage the feelings and experiences. That's kind of what we're really hoping for. The other service which we have is mental health advisors. Angus is one of the lead mental health advisors, and what they offer is also a therapeutic intervention and practical support advice to students. And the great thing about the mental health advisors is they can be involved longer term. It wouldn't be weekly, but they could be involved perhaps a whole semester, and they might see you every 4 weeks or every 3 weeks and check in. They'd also liaise with your permission with academic colleagues, external agencies, your GP, etc. And so they can really be somebody that sort of keeps you almost like a cushion that you can keep going back to just to check in along your journey whilst you're trying to manage through whatever it is you're going through. They also work really closely with disability and inclusion, and it can provide practical support. And there might be reasonable adjustments that need to be made, whether it's around something like dyslexia or looking at supporting you for a referral for ADHD or anything like that. The mental health advisors they've got a really good understanding and a good grasp of that. So those are kind of the 3 provisions which we have, which you would class almost as the face-to-face, albeit across WebEx on video conferencing, but that's what you'd be able to have on a weekly, or in the mental health advisor's case, slightly longer space in between. So there's anything else you want to add to the mental health advice service, Angus?
No, I think you've covered it all. I think it's a safe space, hopefully, for students to share or talk about things which are, I suppose, causing us concern or upsetting us in some way. And it's not formal therapy. It's more therapeutic intervention, so emotional and practical support, but it's still a safe space to talk about things. And I suppose the mental health advisors pinch and borrow a bit from counselling and CBT,
Totally.
lots of other services and types of therapy as well. So we take the best from all and make it even better. That's the mental health advice.
Indeed. And I would say as well that I
suppose it's also important to say you don't need a formal mental health diagnosis or condition. It's mental well-being, and so that's really important. So stress, whatever, a one-off session sometimes can be enough, or some students might come and see us for longer term if there's more complex stuff going on. But certainly you don't need to be referred by a GP or have a diagnosis. It's there for all students really, with sort of worried about something through to a major formal mental well-being difficulty or concern.
Definitely. I think just to reiterate what Angus has said there as well, is we're going to talk about the pathway, because usually when students contact the wellbeing support, you'll have an assessment. So you might think, well, I'm not too sure, is it counselling that I want? Is it CBT? Is it mental health advice? When you have your assessment, you'll be guided through that process. We've got some forms and questionnaires, but you'll actually meet with a therapist just to have an assessment. And that's usually sort of a 50-minute assessment, and they'll help guide you to find out what best suits you. So we're going to have a quick pause. We're kind of halfway through. We're on track, on time as well. But what we'll do is we'll have 3 minutes. If you want to get yourself a drink, cup of tea or a coffee or some water or anything, we'll have a break for just a few minutes, and then we'll come back. We'll be back at 5:08.
Just to say hello, Chef. Oh, she's away.
She's away. Okay.
She wants to interrupt her.
Let's keep it moving. Hi guys, hopefully you're able to just get a quick drink there. As you can see on this next slide, we're going to move on to health and well-being. The wee cup of tea there says, you cannot drink from an empty cup. Fill yourself up, you're worth it. And I think that's really important. Often we want to be supportive to others and be able to feel like we're managing, but really to function, we need to make sure that we're nurturing ourselves. That's really, really important. Big part of when you engage with student wellbeing, and if you decide that counselling or CBT is what you're after, is registering with the GP. Really, really important. There's a hyperlink on the page there, so when you get the slides, this will take you directly to the NHS Scotland Service Directory. You just put in your postcode, and that'll be able to show you the nearest GP practice for you to register. The other thing to say is that even if you haven't registered at certain GPs, you can go as a guest, as a visitor, if you do need to get something checked out. And it's really important. Often we only contact the hospitals or GPs when something's wrong. So it's kind of really important to know that you have that access and you've got that vet if and when you need it. Other thing which is important is to try and feed yourself properly and regularly. It sounds, again, really obvious, but food is a fuel, and often we kind of neglect that. You know, we can go hours, if not a whole day, sometimes when we feel like we're studying hard, or we've got other things on, or we're distracted, and that has a real big impact on our efficiency and productivity. So it's really important to regulate that and to try and fuel yourself. It also will help you with your studies. In fact, you know, it's going to mean that you're functioning at an optimum, in an optimum way. Other thing we've got here is exercise, and I know for a lot of people it's a bit like, just, you know, it's not my thing, and there's nothing that I really like. But exercise can be an array of things. It can be going for a walk. Angus mentioned yoga several times, and you can do. There's so many online, you know, 10-day, try it for 10 days, 30-day practice, and it's something which, as well as being a physical exercise, and with yoga, it's also working on the breath, and we're going to talk a lot about that later in terms of stress and anxiety. Getting an understanding of the breath and relaxation can be really useful. Obviously, at the moment with lockdown, there are limitations to that in terms of the gyms are not open, and I know a lot of people, especially students who I've spoke to, find that really difficult. At the moment, they're not able to go out and do the usual things, especially if it's a communal sport or something which you do as a group. But even just, you know, taking a stroll or walking around the block can be really useful. Something which I've been recommending to a few students as well is there's a few apps you can get. There's an app I use which is called 7 actually, and it's 7 minutes. It's just 7-minute workout. So when people talk about doing an exercise, it doesn't have to be for an hour or even half an hour. Just going out for 5 minutes or doing a quick burst to get the heart rate up can break up the day, and it can really invigorate. You know, you produce a lot of serotonin and endorphins through exercise as well, which is like the feel-good hormones. So that's really, really useful. Angus mentioned before about, you know, COVID and just being aware of what the current safety, hygiene and social distancing guidelines are and precautions is really important, especially if you're in halls. Just making sure that you know what your rights and your regulations are, as well as what things are going to perhaps put you in a difficult situation. So just being aware of that's really important. You can find further information about that on the link there, which is at the Napier homepage. My Napier page is COVID-19. Further to this, if you do feel like you need support, please try and seek some help. That can be through friends, talking to friends, family, tutors, PDTs. That can often be a first point, even if you think, actually, at this point, I'm not really thinking I want to go to student wellbeing, but I'm feeling a bit flat, speak to somebody. If it does progress, or it is something that is continually being an issue for you, this is what the university counselling and mental wellbeing support is for. So please get in touch. We're here to support you, and we want to make sure that whilst you're at university that you do feel like you're not alone, and there's support out there for you. Also, you can make an appointment with your GP. In certain cases, it can be a medical issue that can be underlying or you're not even aware of. So reaching out and being clear about that is really important. Next, we're going to have a little look on the cycle of stress.
Hello, everybody, and it's Angus here again. And yeah, also the cycle of stress. This is the, I suppose, just to go back to a previous sort of, so this is one of the sort of classic pillars of around about CBT and CBT therapy, and you know, obviously it's much more on this, but one of the sort of, you know, central pillars is about identifying what sort of cycles of stress, anxiety, low mood, whatever might be for us as individuals, and it'll be different for all of us. But this is the kind of common generic sort of model, obviously, and you'll be aware of this, probably a lot of you. But it's thoughts. So if I have a presentation, it's my thoughts about that presentation, maybe thinking that people are going to laugh at me, that I'm going to stumble over my words, that, you know, I'm not going to do very well. Then those are powerful thoughts themselves, but those will then generate you know, feelings of tension, stress, you know, maybe feel a bit down, which will then generate, you know, it'll have an impact on my behaviour. So I might start to pace, fidget. You know, obviously, if those feelings and thoughts become really, really kind of overwhelming, then I might, you know, have to cancel the presentation or avoid it altogether, and that in turn will then feed into the thoughts and emotions, and before we know it, that kind of circle or cycle, often called a vicious cycle, has been set in place. And obviously this will be based on our previous experiences around about, you know, life and events in our life. But it's also important, this cycle of stress, it doesn't just go clockwise in this way, and that, you know, emotions will actually, you know, underpin thoughts, because if I'm feeling a bit stressed or tense, then that will increase thoughts about, you know, not being very good at something, or thoughts that are challenging, and behaviour in itself will also impact on thoughts and also feelings as well. So all these things actually interlinked and actually kind of, you know, connect together. So it's not just a sort of cycle, it's actually kind of, and part of CBT and the work that we have in counselling mental health advisors to look at these cycles and to try and identify the elements within it for all of us, the individual elements that we all have, and to try and interrupt or even break or slow down these cycles of stress. Next slide, please.
I was just going to add as well, Angus, that a good way to remember the cycle is think, feel, do. You know, just when you're in those places of anxiety, it's like think, what are my thoughts? Feel, what am I feeling? And do, which is the behavior, what am I doing? You can think, feel, do. And as Angus said, if you're able to either change the thought, change what you're thinking, create a different feeling. You know, if you're feeling down, what's going to make me feel up, or is going to make me feel relaxed? And do, maybe I can do something different than what I'm doing now, and that can sometimes break that cycle.
Definitely. And we're going to look at thoughts particularly because, you know, sometimes I'm a CBT therapist and mental health advisor, and I think the thoughts are one of the kind of main contributory factors, and certainly some of the most challenging within that cycle. But as Nikki says, behaviour can be adapted and changed, and you know, if we change our ability to identify thoughts, our emotions, and some of the exercises later will also look at how we, you know, steady or slow down our emotional responses to things as well. So it's estimated that we have 70,000 to 100,000 thoughts a day. I thought it might have been more than that. A lot of those thoughts are probably not hugely significant. Probably, do I want butter or marmalade on my toast, or where's my toothbrush, or you know, where did I leave my shoes last night, type of thing. So the everyday kind of thoughts that are there. Our thoughts are not always our friends, you know. I think it's important. Sometimes our thoughts can actually be as someone described them, our thoughts are sometimes like our worst enemy. They can pop into our head and they can be really kind of quite critical of ourselves, or quite down on ourselves and our ability, and rob us of our confidence. So really important I think this is a really important statement, that our thoughts are not statements of fact, they are opinions. So, if I have a thought that I am the silliest person in the whole of Scotland, that will have an impact on my confidence, on my mood, on my behaviour potentially. And go back to that vicious circle. We'll kick that vicious circle in. But that thought that I am the silliest person in Scotland is not fact. It is an opinion I'm having about myself. Who's to define silly? I'm in Scotland, and so I might argue there was lots of silly people in Scotland. Choose to say that I'm the silliest of all of those people. So, it is an opinion, and as such, what I recommend to students, and I recommend to myself, is sometimes naming my thoughts. That is a thought you're having, and that is an opinion. It's not fact, and that way, the thought loses its punch, loses its impact, if I name it as a thought and I name it as an opinion. Because, if I'm really believing that I'm the silliest person about that, or thinking that's fact, that will have an impact on me. Where if I name it as an opinion, name it as a thought, it immediately loses some of its impact. And I'm not saying that's easy, but it's a good strategy to try and keep practicing, keep reminding myself. And I try to do that myself. And it's also important that it's not the situation. So to go back to the previous one about slide we talked about presentation, it's not the presentation itself that causes the vicious circle or cycle to kick in. It's our thoughts or emotions relating to that particular incident. So the presentation, it's our thoughts about that which then spark the emotions, and the whole vicious circle is kicked in. So that's about thoughts. Next slide, please, Mickey. This is an interesting technique, and one that I recommend to a lot of students, and I've actually used myself in the past. And it's about worry time. And what is worry time? Well, so it's setting aside a time or a space in the day, or every second day, or whatever it might be. It might be 20 minutes, half an hour, where I give myself permission to look at my worries, to focus on my worries, to indulge my worries, to really give myself time to delve into them and analyze them and look at them, and to think about that time and my worries uninterrupted and with permission. Give myself permission to do that. And so that's really important, that worry time. So if I have a worry, out with that time, let's say my worry time is between 7 and half 7, in the evening, and I set aside that time, and I do it when I'm walking or whatever it is. Then if I have a worry comes into my head out with that time, I'll take a note of it. I'll write it down, and I'll bank it for my worry time, so that I can then look at it in more detail. I can analyze it, I can indulge in it, I can, celebrate it if I want, but it's in that particular worry time. And one of the real benefits of that, and this is also research, is that what we do is that we then end up controlling our worries rather than our worries controlling us. Because what we're doing is we're actually putting a limit on, we're putting a space. So I'm not going to think about you now at 11 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to write you down, and I'm going to look at you in more detail at 7 o'clock in my worry time, when that time is there. And it can be really, really beneficial. And people talk about initially having 10, 12 worries in their worry time. And if they actually do it for 6 or 7 weeks, often people talk about there being less worries in that time. In actual fact, there's more space in that time, because there's less worries, because we're often dealing with them, responding to them, and feeling better about things, feeling more in control, which will then ultimately, hopefully, and I believe it does, reduce the amount of worries that we have as well. One of the sort of secondary things about the worry time is when we are looking at our worries and we are, analysing them, is to look at what's a productive worry and what's unproductive or hypothetical worry. So a productive worry is a worry where I can actually do something about it. So if I'm worried about the boiler in my email just popped up, a boiler about in my flat not maybe not working properly, or leaking, like, you know, I'm maybe lying in bed at night thinking what we're going to do, what can I do about that, you know, whatever. Where if I actually spend time in the worry time as a productive worry, there is something I can do about that. I can contact my landlord or lady, I can contact the letting agency, so I can be active and proactive about resolving that worry. If I'm worried about some academic issue, that's maybe keeping me awake at night, and what is the impact on my studies and whatever, that sort of stuff, and it starts to, that vicious circle starts to grow out of that. And what can happen is that I can then look at that worry and start to think, well, what can I do about it? And actually, I can contact my program leader, my module leader. I can maybe contact some of my friends in the course or peers in the course, and start analysing and looking at aspects of that, so that I actually do something about it. And it's the same with unproductive worries. So if I'm worried about that I'm going to be hit on the head by a bit of the International Space Station that might peel off and hit me on the head as I leave the house, I can think about that worry. I can spend time analysing it, you know, thinking about it. The reality is, it's so unlikely to happen. I'm like have more chance of winning the lottery 10 times in the one day and being struck by lightning on that day than twice probably than I do of being hit on the head by a bit of the International Space Station. And ultimately, if it does happen, there's nothing I can do about it. And so that's an unproductive worry. And so I can score that off. I can think about it. I can have a, analyze it. I can even revel in it, but I can, score it off because it's unproductive worry. And that's really, really important. That helps us break down those worries, and so stops the repetitive cycle of some worries and going over and over. It can be really, really useful. Again, focusing on that worry too. And next slide, please.
Thanks, Angus. I was going to say, when I was listening today with the worry time, a similar or almost the other side of that scale is having time for gratitude. So as well as having that time of your worry, having a bit of time where you can actually reflect on what has gone well or what you're grateful for. So it's, as you said, having a specific time. And with the gratitude, I definitely recommend that before you go to bed or when you get up. It's almost like starting off your day or ending your day with a sense of, actually, well, I have done that and I do have this in my life, as well as having, as Angus mentioned, that bespoke time when you go, this is the time when I can do something productive with worries that I have. So, yeah.
Thank you, Nikki. And this is obviously what's called, one of our techniques is called distraction grounding techniques. And this is called the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. Some of you may be aware of this. No apologies for that. I think it's a really effective and easy to use technique. I certainly encourage students to use it. I've used it myself. I always encourage students to start this by taking a couple of deep breaths, diaphragmatic breathing. So we fill up our chest and feel our diaphragm raise. So we're, because that's often something we don't do, is actually take that time and that focus on our breathing going in, because it's often we breathe through another part of our chest, or we're so caught up and stuff, we're breathing through our mouth. So it's really deep breath through our nose. And people often count, maybe for inhale through our nose, for the count of 5 or 6, hold for 5 or 6, and slowly exhale for again for the count of 5 or 6. And that's the way to start. It's also a good book about making sure that there's solid ground under us. So this is something you can do in the kitchen, or sitting inside your bed, or even if we're out for a walk or on the back of it, and when we get back to lectures or classrooms, in the back of the classroom. But it is about trying to make sure there's something solid under our feet. It feels solid there as well, kind of thing. So you wouldn't do this while up a ladder, kind of thing. That just would not be a sensible approach to any grounding or distraction technique. And I love it when students, that breathing, when they talk about, I maybe give them 5, 6, and 6, 5 in, 6 to hold, and 6 to exhale. When students come back to me and say, I see those numbers, I got rid of your numbers and I substitute with my own to make it work. And that's really what we want. I think it's the same with this techniques. Sometimes students will adapt it, and I think that's really, really important. But as it is here, it's describing, after we've breathed and after we've kind of got, we're comfortable, so we're in that solid place, it's 5 things that we can see in the room or the space, if we're out walking, on the bus, wherever. It's 5 things that we can see. Focus on those things. What are the 5 things that we can see? It's 4 things that we can feel. Again, you know, that might be the seat under us, it might be our clothes, it might be the arms of the chair, it might be, you know, a pen or something in front of us. 5 things we can feel. Then it's 3 things that we can hear. And again, if we're in the kitchen, it might be a washing machine or a fridge, it might be our flatmate, you know, making their tea or whatever, or the neighbour upstairs, if we're outside for a walk on the bus. 5 things, sorry, 3 things that we can hear. Then there's 2 things that we can smell, and that's a little bit more tricky if we're in the kitchen or outside. It's a little bit easier in the park or the kitchen. There may be sort of, you know, smells of food or coffee or something like that, you know. Obviously, we're sitting on the sofa at the edge of the bed, it may be a little bit more tricky, but what I often do is you know, particularly in the modern day, we've got this antibacterial soaps and stuff, so there's often a smell of that we can use, or the smell of a clothes fabric or washing, and so there is things that we can you know, 2 things easily that we can smell. And the last one is naming something that we feel good about ourselves, and that's sometimes the most challenging for all of us, is to think about something that we're good at. And this is called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. And this is an example. Students will mix that up, and it might be, you know, 4 things that they can hear and 3 things they can feel, or only use some of it because that works for them. And that's all these techniques. It's about adapting it and making it work for us. And then again, it's ending with the techniques. Thoughts will come into our head while we're doing this, and that's okay. It's not about not thinking. As we said, we have 70,000 to 100,000 thoughts a day. So it's about thoughts will come in, and that's okay. It's not about fighting these thoughts. It's not about trying to resist them. It's about acknowledging they're there, but going back to the part of this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique that we're on. So going back, if the hearing, going back to what can I hear? What can I hear? And focusing on that. It's not about trying to fight the thoughts, because we're thinking beings, and thoughts will come into head. And this is a very effective and easy to use distraction and grounding technique. And next slide, please. And these are further grounding and distraction techniques, and again, they're not rocket science. They're easy to use. We'll put here and now exercises, and again, I use them with lots of students. Encourage students to use them because they are easy to use, and the things that you can do walking to the shops, or you know, while you're making your tea in the morning or whatever. And they're here and now because it's about trying to get, like the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's about trying to get us to focus on here and now, because so much with anxiety or stress, or is about the what if thinking. Think about the future, what comes tomorrow or next week or next month, and even sometimes longer term than that. So it's bringing us back to here and now, and that will also help break that cycle, but also helps reduce some of the stress and some of the emotions that we might be feeling associated with stress. To describe what we're doing in detail, so I'm sitting at the kitchen table, you know, sitting upright, I'm drinking tea, it's got milk in it, it's a spoon, it's herbal tea, whatever it might be. We're going for a walk, you know, and while we're doing walking speed, you know, that type of thing. Describe what we can feel in detail. Again, it's about looking at the detail. So what can I feel in terms of the chair, the pavement, the wind, the sunlight, you know, maybe the windows open in the kitchen, the cold air coming in, the seat beneath me, the floor, you know, the wind, our clothes and our legs, arms, whatever. It's describing what we feel, and again in detail. Look at that, and then describing again in detail where we are. So if we're in the kitchen, it's about what is there, what's the kitchen table like, what's it made of, is it wood, the arms, describing the arms, the legs, describing what it is. If your kitchen table's got arms, then good on you. That's a fantastic kitchen table to have. I meant legs. So describing the legs, and you know, and what's on the kitchen table, you know, and it's also about counting things, you know. So it's about how many pens are there, and how many mugs are on the mug, you know, rack or whatever, or you know, the dirty dishes. It's about, you know, looking at these kind of things, you know, the picture on the wall, who's there, the colours of these things are really important for out for a walk, you know. how many cars, or the colour of the cars, or the park, the grass, how many trees. Really detailed sort of description. Again, thoughts might come into our head, and that's okay. It's not about not thinking. It's about focusing back on what we're looking at, the place we are, and that can be a really useful technique just to help reduce, to slow things down, to bring us into the here and now. And these things might not work initially. We have to practice them. They may not work for us, but I think it's giving it a go, any of these techniques, and trying to practice it. And I know myself, I have to practice sometimes because it's not always easy. So the more we practice anything, the easier they become and the better. And the more we can adapt it to suit ourselves as well. And that's what's really, really important about these exercises. So thank you very much. Over to yourself, Nicky.
Thanks, Angus. So the next slide we've got is with loneliness and isolation. And I think it's important to acknowledge that it's normal to sometimes feel lonely, even at uni, but specifically and particularly during COVID and during this pandemic. You're not alone. A lot of people are feeling really isolated, and unfortunately we're in a situation where the things we would often recommend for people to do, we can't even do those things now. So you're not alone, and recognizing that can be really important. Trying to accept some of those feelings, but also engaging in soothing activities can be really important. Just listening to you actually was quite soothing there, Angus, when you're slowing down. Even sometimes the tone of how somebody's speaking, or it can be the music that you're listening to, can really create a soothing atmosphere. Something that we do recommend within a lot of the student wellbeing is things like mindfulness and meditation and relaxation tools. There's lots of really good apps out there. And for me, it's often about trying different things. I know a lot of people would have heard of, say, Calm or Headspace, and they go, I've tried it, it's not for me. There are hundreds. So if Headspace isn't for you, you try Calm. If Calm isn't for you, try Insight Timer. If Insight Timer, so try things out first. And also, I'd recommend you giving them ample time. You don't do something for a couple of days and then think, it's rubbish. You usually have to give it a little bit of time, like learning to ride a bike or learning to swim, before you start to see the benefits. Staying socially connected, reach out, take breaks. That's a really important one at university, because often we feel like more is better. If I've studied more, if I spent more time, I remember myself when I was at uni, and people were like, I was in the library for 6 hours. But you probably only spent 60 minutes really focusing and working. So try and be aware of that, and taking breaks will make you more efficient. Connecting online, we mentioned earlier, whether that's through social media, whether it's like Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook groups, it's really important. Sometimes it can almost feel a bit overwhelming also. So having breaks is also important from that, but accessing them can be really mood boosting. I was involved in an event with the business school with Eloise, and what it was kind of a coffee evening. And initially I was a bit like, I've worked all day, can I really be bothered going to this thing? But I went and I met colleagues that I would have never met before, had interactions with students, and just like everybody who's engaging today, it's breaking up and it's connecting and it's being social. So that's really important. Another thing aligned to connecting online is connect to nature and animals. Some of you may have pets, you may have dogs or cats, and animals can be great. The best thing about animals is, they don't ask for anything really. They're just there for you, and they connect, and they're also very sensitive to emotions and feelings. And previously in the university, there was like pet therapy, and there's things where you can actually, patting a dog or sitting with a cat can be really nurturing. Something which was mentioned at the start of the pandemic was people started to hear nature very differently. Traffic was reduced and people were hearing birds and the wind in the trees. So when you're feeling isolated, take some time to connect. And as Angus was saying, if you can tune into those things and recognize that we are still connected to nature. We've just had snow, and just going out and walking in the snow, and when you could hear the crunch, and you can see, you know, the brightness reflecting off the snow. Those things can help us give a sense of connection to our environment. That can be really useful. Perhaps a journal, self-reflection can be really useful. Sometimes just taking a bit of time to reflect on and get a different perspective of where you are can really be connecting. Art, crafts. Often, sometimes we think everything has to be of use. There's plenty of space and time to have things that are just for fun and are just about connecting with yourself and don't require much thought, especially if you're studying. It's like a lot of your time might be reading journals or doing research or, you know, referencing or whatever. Sometimes it's good to switch off from that and just connect to yourself and your being. And aligned to that is trying to engage in mood boosting activities, anything that brings you joy, whether that's watching a bit of comedy, music. I mean, music is a massive thing for me personally, and actually within the student wellbeing team, we've been having what we've been calling music mixtapes. So what we do as a group, everybody selects a tune, we'll have a topic, and each person comes along and we have somebody who plays the tracks, and we have to guess who selected the tune and name the tune. And we've just done that for the last, you know, 2 months, and it's a great way of connecting together, enjoying the music, enjoying the sounds, and it's an opportunity to connect. So you might be able to do that with your friends, you might be able to do it with your family, where you say, okay, we're all going to get together and do this once a week or fortnightly. Accepting that, you know, this period is difficult, but hopefully it is temporary. It's a temporary time and it's beyond our control. There isn't many things that we can guarantee in the world, and we've seen that. But one thing that we can definitely guarantee is change. It's probably one of the only constants that it can't stay the same. You know, things will change, and that can be really hard during times when we feel isolated and lonely. But that can be almost like the candle, that the flame that keeps us going, that actually this will change, this too will pass. And that kind of aligns to the last point there, that lonely feelings should also come and go. There are transients of emotions, and that's kind of part of life. So yeah, it is difficult. No one's saying it's easy, but by actually taking some ownership, by actually trying to connect, trying to reach out, and some of these points here, hopefully that can increase your sense of connectivity. The next slide that I've got here is around low mood and ACE activities. So the ACE activities, ACE is achieve, control, and enjoy. So during times of increased stress, it can help us to plan these activities, and they can contribute to your sense of achievement, connection, and, you know, with others, and you can find some enjoyment. So if we take a look at achieve, that can be sort of self-care. That can be a safety routine, working, learning something new. Myself, during the pandemic, I learned how to juggle. It's not for any other reason, just to do something different, to master a new task. It could be Duolingo. I know a lot of people have been doing that. You know, it's a chance which you may never have thought, oh, I'm always too busy, to do something that is not necessarily aligned to your studies, but it's something that you can get into and you can get a sense of achievement. For many people, as bizarre as it sounds, even tidying, you know, organizing your room, laying it out, or making sure that your clothes are set out can give you a sense of completing a task, and you're finishing that and creating a little bit of order within the chaos that's going around. Cooking, Angus mentioned cooking as well. Sometimes, you know, if you can get a recipe together, there'll be a sense of achievement if you're making the, you know, synonymous banana bread or just bread in general, and it comes out the oven. You're also connecting to all the senses, and there'll be a sense of achievement that you've set out a task to do something and you've achieved that. Sleeping patterns also a big part of that. Trying to get into the routines can really give you a sense of, okay, if I can set myself some targets and I can achieve that, you will also see the physical benefits of it. And also acts of kindness. Achievement's not just practical things, but it can be connecting with people and checking in with folk you haven't checked in for a while. I know a lot of people during the pandemic have reached out to folk who they haven't spoke for years or months, and taking the opportunity to do that. And you can get a real sense of achievement from that. And that also links to connect. So being in contact with family, friends, neighbors, classmates, things like that, that can be really, really useful. There's lots of different services and helplines available, and later on in the slides, we'll have some links to places that you can connect to if you are in a situation where you're feeling particularly vulnerable. You know, because everybody doesn't have great relationships with family, or may not have a good set of core friends, but there are places that you can reach out. And we'll talk about Turnaround together also later on, which is an online platform which you can engage with as well. And finally, enjoyment. I think very, very often we kind of focus on tasks, activities, completion, and life's also about enjoyment. It's about being present. It's about being able to take a moment to sort of gather your thoughts or reflect on what you are achieving. And I've spoke to pretty much all students I work with and say to them, listen, the fact that you are at uni during this pandemic is amazing. Everybody today who is listening and tuning in today is wanting to do something better for themselves. That is an achievement. If you do nothing else today, actually, I signed up and I attended. And it's these little things that if you multiply those, then you see development and you see growth. Next slide. I want people just to take a moment just to think and to tune in. And it says is when's the last time you felt relaxed? So just take a moment to think about the last time that you felt like really calm and relaxed. Where were you? What were you doing? It's a really important thing to be able to just bring things down sometimes and be present. And what I was wanting to do with everyone today is do a little bit of a mindfulness breathing exercise. It's just a 3-minute exercise, which will allow us to tune in to just being present. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm hopefully going to be able to sync this together, because obviously we had issues with the sound before, but hopefully you can all hear this. Okay. So what I want you to do is just take a moment, breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. If you feel comfortable in your own space, you can even close your eyes. And you might want to just get comfortable in your seat. So breathe in, deep in through your nose, then breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. And you start to feel calm, relaxed, and everything starts to slow down. All your worries and your stresses, they're not important now, you're just in this space. Just taking a moment to be present and be calm. So breathe in and breathe out. And that's your heart rate slowing down, your body becoming more relaxed. If you have thoughts that come, doesn't matter, let them come and you let them go. This is just time for yourself, time to be calm. Breathe in, and then breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. You want to try and breathe in through your nose, then out through your mouth. And that is us back in the space. Hopefully you're able to take a little bit of time within that 3 minutes. And that should help you to feel calm and relaxed. And that practice can be done anytime, and it can be a minute. It can be 3 minutes. You're not in competition with anyone else. As I mentioned before, you might have thoughts that come in. You might feel agitated at first. And with all these practices, it does take a little bit of time to become more comfortable with it and more familiar with it. I often recommend, even just starting with a minute. That's 7 breaths of in and out, just 7. And it can be used when you're going to do a presentation. It can be used when you're about to go on screen. If you find it difficult when you go to online lectures, you go, okay, before I go on, I'm just going to do my breathing. I'm going to get myself in a space of calm and relaxation. As you can see on the page, that's from the Calm website. They have an app, albeit it's a paid app. It's free to download, but like most of the apps, you have to subscribe to open it up. But one of the good things about Calm is part of the app, which is the breathing apparatus in it, is free. So that sound that you were getting, that little tool there, is free, and you can access that yourself. And that's both on, Apple or Android. You go to the Google Play Store, the App Store, and that's free. And there's lots of other different types of tools that you can use like that. So I encourage people to explore that, especially if you find that relaxing and calming. So the next thing we've got here is self-care and well-being tips. We've mentioned it a few times today, keeping regular routines such as sleeping, eating, and exercise if possible. Really, really important. Sleep is so underrated. I think we often celebrate sometimes thinking, I only had a couple hours sleep and I still got it done. Actually, sleep is a time for us to process a lot of the information that we're taking in. I'm really into my sport and into my fitness, and one of my coaches, I do martial arts, and he always says that, listen, sleep is probably the number one thing that you don't do enough, because that's when a lot of the growth and a lot of the development happens. So we're going to say something there, Angus?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I'm just aware of time, that was all.
Okay, we're cracking on. See, this is what happens, we get right into it. So sleep's really important. Try and get 7 hours at least a night if possible. And obviously we're studying, that's not always the case. Sometimes you've got to do lots of things have deadlines and things like that, but getting into the routines is really important. Expressing gratitude, really good predictor of well-being. Boost your mood and your immune system. Notice what you're grateful for. Even just thinking of one thing now, the Wi-Fi is working. How frustrating is it when the Wi-Fi dips out? We've been pretty lucky. Things like that, really important to just take stock. Savoring, trying to immerse yourself in the present moment, and be kind. Be kind to yourself and others. Self-care is essential now, and it always will be. This next slide is something that was made by Napier. I'm gonna see if I can sync this. It might be slightly out of sync. It's only a minute, but I think it's really useful. It talks about why some people may find it difficult to come and talk with us, and who should come and talk with us at student wellbeing. So
it's been going well. I've been busy, had a lot of things kind of clear my head, but apart from that, work's good, school's good. I wouldn't say I'm struggling. Like, things are hard. Everyone finds things hard. I'm not any worse than anyone else. So, no. I have a lot of time for myself. You know, I have to work, I have to also homework done, assignments, things like that. Maybe I should take a bit more time, but do instance, I best keep it. I'm not really cool, although it's not like I have much of a choice. Kind of just have to. So yeah, I am fine.
Over to yourself, Angus.
Hello, I'm aware of time, so these next, we're coming to the end of the presentation, so we can all go on and get a cup of tea or practice some of the things that we've learned here. I think it's important. So these next few slides are more information, so I will rush through them a little bit. So this is just a reminder about my Napier, you know, and all the resources there, apps and self-help, and you know, access to various kind of resources there. So please, and information about the services. So please access it. Student counselling, mental wellbeing, but also all the services we talked about on my Napier. Please come and access it, and through that, then you can then contact the service as well. Next slide, please. This is the referral route, and also this is the kind of, we have one referral route into the service really, and it's through this this email address here. And if you do want to come and see us, you just email counselling@napier.ac.uk. You'll be asked to register the service by completing a short registration form, and then you'll be able to arrange an assessment or time to meet with one of the practitioners, and through that then we can ascertain, depending on what the issues are, concerns are, which part of the service would be best for you and most appropriate for you. We also have drop-ins on a Monday, Tuesday and Friday between 10 and 12, and again use email that address, and you can then, you know, through the phone, we can arrange time to speak to you through the phone, and that's another way. Also sometimes we may want to, it's a big step to take sometimes, so sometimes on occasions an academic or a member of university staff or team may be able to make a referral on your behalf with your permission, also copy you in the email to the above email address, and that sometimes happens as well because it can be a big step. So the next slide, please. And these are just other resources, which is obviously self-help, which is you get on my Napier, which is a detailed sort of bibliography about apps and TED Talks and books and articles around about self-help, well-being, you know, mental well-being, counselling, things like that. Together all as a partnership agency which we have signed up for, and we work together, which is an online resource full of, again, sort of, you know, exercises, well-being tips, an online community there which can be very supporting, and a lot of information there. And Silver Cloud, again, you can access through your email address. There's two versions. One is the CBT based service looking at well-being and you know, break it down to modules on sleep and resilience and stress and stuff like that. Here it is here, and again you can access the unsupported versions through your generic email address, and there is supported versions which you can access if you just come and contact the wellbeing team and you're assessed that feels the best thing for you to access that. And a number of students find it really beneficial and can access the supportive version or the non-supportive version while getting on with the rest of their lives and doing other things as well, and meeting the demands and things of life. And it can be very beneficial looking at some of these modules. So that's the Silver Cloud, which we have also a partnership agency as well. A number of other universities are tied up with Silver Cloud. And then I think it's the last slide. So I just want to say thank you so much for coming along to part of the Feel Fab February campaign, and it's fantastic. And in terms of the slides at the end, do you want to send them to you, Helisha, and you'll be able to put them up on the ENSA sort of website? How would we do that?
Yeah, that sounds great. We can put it up on the ENSA YouTube if that works.
Yes, we can certainly do that, yes. we can send that to you, yes, and also the slides. Would that be okay?
Of course.
And I suppose we'll look at any questions or anything that comes in, and we'll get back to people over the next little while. And just let's say thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in.
So, and thank you very much, and hopefully it was useful.
Thanks, Ellie.
Anything you'd like to add, Elisa? Was that okay for part of Full Fab February?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I think it was really informative for everyone, even for me. I was taking notes of things I'll probably do later. So no, I thought it was amazing, and definitely great that I can put it up, put the recording up for other students that might have missed.
And that would be okay, won't it, for the recording, Billy, for ENSA to host that?
Yeah, that'll be fine. As soon as the recording becomes available tomorrow, I'll email Lisa the recording as well as yourself, Jens, and then yeah, that'll be
Brilliant.
Perfect.
Thanks, Eloise.
And we finished in time as well, so well done to everybody.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Efficiency, mate.
When Nick and I get talking, I thought we might still be here at 8 o'clock.
Just letting you know it's still recording, I think. I don't know.
That's fine.
Okay.
It's okay.
Is it still recording, Billy?
It is,
Yeah.
yes, guys. Do you want me to stop recording?
It's the bloopers.
The bloopers, yes. Well, if you want me to stop recording, guys, I'll stop recording.
Thank
Okay,
you for
I'll-
reminding us about Hellish before we.
That's fine. It's happened to me so many times. I'm usually the one who has to record the meetings, and I always forget, first of all, to
Yeah.
start recording, which is the worst thing to do, and then to stop recording, so then you can hear us all chatting about random things at the end. So at least that you can cut it off. So
Well,
it's fine.
now I'm gonna stop recording now. So it's 6 o'clock. So